Let's talk about something pretty important that isn't that sexy, and that is insurance. Now, as a business owner, you're gonna have a general liability insurance program probably for your LLC company, but that usually just protects you from things like maybe personal injury if you have employees and they trip on a cable in the office and they hurt themselves, or you have maybe like office equipment that gets stolen from your office or gets damaged for whatever reason. And so you have insurance in place for that. When you start getting into supplements and e-commerce and you start shipping products that you've created to your customers, you also need product liability insurance. Now this is different. And when I say need, that is a pretty strong word. A lot of people just don't get it. But if you're selling on channels like Amazon, once you pass about 10,000 in sales, they can pop you with the request to show insurance, proof of insurance for product liability in particular. Your typical insurance provider, a company like State Farm, Allstate, Prudential, these kinds of companies, they're typically not going to specialize in e-commerce and product liability insurance. So you're going to have to go somewhere else to get that specific insurance. And thankfully, there's some really good companies out there that actually underwrite for this type of risk. And so just taking a step back, this video is going to be about explaining my journey in establishing insurance, where I think you might want to get it, at what level. Everyone's going to be able to have a discussion with their insurance broker, and I would recommend you talk to your financial advisor, your insurance broker, do your own research before you make this decision. I'm not your legal counsel or your financial advisor, but that being said, I'll give you some pointers that'll probably help you understand what this all entails. All right, so the more you have to lose, the more likely you're gonna want insurance. That's kind of a general rule of thumb, meaning if you have a lot of money, you have a lot of assets in your personal life, a house, a car, maybe you own a lot of things, you own a lot of crypto, you have a lot of cash, you own a lot of equities, just the more you have, you're a bigger target. So that's one of the fundamental rules of insurance is like the bigger of a target you are to go after, the more people are incentivized to go after you because you're basically a target worth pursuing because you have more to gain from them. So in the instance of e-commerce, for example, it's generally good to keep your profile low, meaning you don't want to show off all of your wealth, flash, all that stuff. If you don't have insurance, certainly you don't want to. And again, all this is under the premise that you're operating and you're doing things legitimately. So I don't ever recommend you ever be illegitimate, but at the same time, people, when they see people with lots of things that they don't have, there's this sort of innate psychological thing that happens in humans, and we tend to want to pursue things. If you have a lot of flash and you're showing off a lot of what you have net worth wise or whatever, it can be sort of a risky thing because it shows people that there's something for them to go after if they were to sue you. If you went and paid lawyers 10 grand for a product that maybe harmed you or you didn't had a bad reaction to, and you knew that the business had no money, you would basically be losing your 10,000 bucks for the law firm. And why would they even write up the lawsuit to pursue someone? So that's just like an example, right? The larger you are as a target, as a business owner, the more likely it is that you're gonna wanna have insurance because frankly, you're just gonna get more of these sort of risks. Now, the other term that they like to talk about in insurance is exposure, meaning just exactly what it sounds like. The more exposed you are, meaning the more sales you do, the more customers you have, the more risky your customers are, and the more risky your sales product or service is, that's gonna also translate to needing insurance because your exposure is higher. Think of a house, right? That maybe you're protecting it from a windstorm. The more exposed the house is to a larger direction of where the wind comes to blow it over, the more exposure it has. It's the same thing with insurance in a business. The more points of sale, the more sales transactions you do, the more sales volume you do, the more exposure you have because you have a larger number of customers that potentially could get injured by your product that you could potentially have in a batch of product that maybe goes out that's bad. And so you're just increasing the risk that you have to potentially be exposed at a higher level. So exposure, something else to consider really big, right? If you sell to your best friend that you've known since childhood and you're super tight and that's your only client, your exposure may not be that big. But if you're selling to thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers that you don't know at all, you may have more exposure. Also on your product side, do you know your supplier? Do you know your supply chain? Do you know this certificate of authenticity, the quality of your products? Are they tested consistently? Is the production cycle quality? All of that factors into whether or not you want to have product insurance. The next part of this video, we're going to talk about the actual types that we went through. We really settled on just 2, and I'll give you the breakdowns here and share the numbers that we got quoted at about a $2.5 million a year SKU for a product. So that's where I'm going to kind of show you that. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the research on why we picked that, and you'll get to kind of summarize this all. But just remember, what do you have to lose? Do you have a lot? Are you passing a certain number of sales where your threshold and your exposure is higher and you're becoming more risky? And then if both those things are starting to build, then you need to consider adding in insurance on your product side, your product liability side, to protect you. In the instance you get sued, you have some sort of class action, you have a product recall, things like that, it can really protect you. So that's the message there for this part of the video. And let's get back into the screen and kind of look at the details on the actual computer screen. Cool, so I'm gonna show you on my screen here some of the options we looked at for insurance and give you a breakdown. My assistant Karen really helped me with this. Huge credit to Karen, she went out of her way, had a few conversations. So this information is about a month and a half out of date. So if you look at these carriers, you're gonna get different quotes, and that's also gonna be dependent on your specific business. So these are very specific numbers to a specific quote. They do not necessarily translate to what you can expect, but use it as a reference point. It's something, it's data. So let's take a look. So going to my screen, we really looked at 2 carriers that we found that kind of jumped out into the industry. And we looked a few different places, but again, we're talking about e-commerce product liability. That's the big thing, right? When you send your product to your customers, you are taking risk because they're trusting you as a business that your product is quality, that there's no contaminants, that they're not going to have maybe a bad reaction. You can't control every variable there, but you can, to some large extent, try to control the quality of the chain and make sure you're on top of it. So we kind of looked at this and broke it down, and this is really how carriers look at it. They basically give you this idea of product in terms of occurrence, and then you're looking at the actual sort of premium. In this case, that's kind of like the fee, the annual premium you're paying, and then the rating. So I think there's 2 things to really look at with insurance carriers. One is their rating. Their reputation is everything, right? An insurance policy is not valuable unless they're actually going to cover you in the incident, and they're not going to maybe nickel and dime you or just not insure you. So you have to make sure that there's no kind of BS there, that the reputation is very strong, that you meet their guidelines. They write a policy for you. They take your money. When something happens, they're not going to hold you back. They're going to support you. They're going to protect you as a client. They're going to make sure that you are protected. And that's how you want the insurance companies to look at that. So I recommend going to 2 places when you do your research here. Look at Reddit forums, read some case studies, read some background about these companies that you're looking at. Also go to Trustpilot. Trustpilot's pretty solid for insurance carriers when I was looking at the background and kind of looking at product liability. So look at Trustpilot because you can get really good information from them on that. Back to my screen here. Basically, we looked at carriers and underwriters and basically brokerages that were writing these insurance policies. And we saw Insurance Canopy as a big choice, and we saw Admiral as another big choice. A significant price difference. Admiral was about 4 times the cost when you think about it, right? And so usually when you look at this, you're looking at insurance, it's gonna be like between 0.5% and 1% of your gross annual revenues. That's just a very rough guideline that what I saw with your insurance carrier. The second thing to think about is per occurrence. Are they experienced? Do they support your type of business? Have they insured other businesses that sell your type of product, that understand the nature of your business? Because basically, if something goes down, you don't want to be dealing with an insurance carrier that doesn't have experience with your problems. Ideally, you don't ever get these problems, but if you do get them, you want to make sure that the carrier has experience, that they can guide you through the process, they can support you. Because as a business owner, I don't know about you, but for me, there's a lot of things I want to know in my business, but one thing I don't want to know is how to be a lawyer, be an insurance carrier, how the insurance world works. I draw the line at operating the business and what I should learn in the operations at surface level ChatGPT discussions around, am I covered? What would I look out for risk-wise? And cases when I would not be covered, and what do I need to do as an operator to make sure my carrier is best prepared to protect me in some awful case. That rare instance occurs where I end up getting into some sort of litigation or lawsuit. So that's how I think about that. Other sides of the business, learning your bookkeeping, your fundamentals, your operations, your fulfillment, your shipping. I think that's really valuable because every time you learn those processes, you're hiring for those people in-house a lot of times, or you're contracting, but you need to know the competence level and how to measure success in those roles. And if you've never done those roles, even for a short period of time, a few weeks at a time, learning them in the trenches, you're going to run into issues actually becoming an operator and being a good hire of those roles. So keep in mind, you want to be able to hire for those roles very effectively. So anyways, went back here, looking at the screen share here of Admiral versus Insurance Canopy. The big deal here is that we have two policies. One is a quarter of the cost, and then reputation. So if you come here to Trustpilot, Admiral has over 100,000 reviews. Their average score is 4.5. And if you look at Insurance Canopy, the average amount of reviews they have is 2,700 and a 4.1 rating. And more recently, you kind of see some anecdotal feedback of reviews that are not that great. So I personally recommend you go through and maybe search for your type of business, right? Type in supplement and start looking at all the reviews around supplements and just see if there's any reviews that mention anything about, hey, this insurance company protected me. They actually did a great job underwriting my business when I got into some sort of class action or litigation. They were there every step of the way. End-to-end supplement packages, experience of claims, thanks. Let's see here. So, it's just going to take some diligence and looking through that and then kind of looking at their reputation and talking to the brokers that you're working with or the sales reps of the agencies. But this is essentially what we did and the process we went through. Ultimately, we ended up going with the more expensive carrier. We're a fast growing brand. We want to have protection. Our product is pretty low risk, but there's always that risk that something could happen. So we didn't want to put ourselves in a position, and I'm a little bit older. I've been in business for 11 years now and have built wealth through other channels. And I have a lot more to lose essentially if something goes down. So I just felt that insurance was a cost of operation that was critical for me. So there you have it. A lot of language there and speaking about insurance, but the bottom line is it's going to be a personal decision based on your exposure, what you have to lose, and the risk of your product as well. Some people just have such a low risk product, they choose to take that risk. But in my opinion, especially as you grow your empire and your wealth and your success, you're going to want to have insurance to cover things that otherwise could be catastrophic and set you back in a major way. So I hope you found this video valuable. If you did, or if you have specific questions as you're starting out your insurance searching process, drop a comment below and let me know. We'll kind of watch those and see what people have to say. Otherwise, I see you on the next video. And if you have more questions, let us know about future topic ideas and we'll talk to you soon.